Hello YouTube, Dave here again. I apologize that I didn't put very many videos out last week, but I came down with a pretty nasty cold slash flu. I don't know which one it was, but I was running a high fever, which always sucks when there's a heat wave going on at the exact same time. So the last 4 or 5 days have been pretty miserable. Starting to feel a little bit better, and I want to get back into the swing of putting out some videos when I get the opportunity. So today I want to talk about the Dragon Age role-playing game, which you can obviously tell by having read the title of the video. So this is a system that I really find myself enjoying more and more as I continue to read through the book. It's something that I really want to run, and I've actually reached out to a few stores here in Halifax, Nova Scotia, asking if they would be willing to let me demo the game there and just run a quick sort of one-shot adventure. The same one actually I want to run is the one that was on the Geek and Sundry tabletop with Will Wheaton. But so I really want to kind of help promote this, and one of the things that I want, the way that I can sort of do this, is through the channel as well. So I've already shown how to make a warrior character, which is not too dissimilar from a rogue, so I'm not going to worry about making a rogue specifically. I also had shown how to make a mage character, and today I want to talk about tests, advanced tests, and their mass combat system, because these things are all sort of tied together. So tests are anything from what you would consider, if you're someone who plays like Dungeons & Dragons or Pathfinder, skill checks, for example, up to even like attack rolls with different weapon types and things of that nature. These basic tests are very simple and straightforward, and they're done in a manner pretty similar to what we're used to for skill checks in things like Dungeons & Dragons. So an example of that would be my warrior character had a strength of 3. Let's just say that I had a focus in a skill or an ability that I'm going to be using here. So whenever you're making a test, you add whatever the stat is for that, be it strength, communication, constitution, dexterity, things of that nature. You add that value to your roll, your 3d6 roll. But you can also have a focus in the very specific task that you're trying to accomplish. So, for example, if my warrior was trying to force a door open, or lift a portcullis, or something like that, the game master may decide that he has to make a strength might check. So let's just say that my warrior has focus in the might, the strength might ability. So when you have a focus in something, it adds an additional +2. So I have a strength of +3, and so that's strength, and then I have a focus, which gives me +2. So whenever I roll the 3d6, I get to add a total combined value of +5. Now it's going to vary, obviously, based off of whether you have the focus or not, and what your ability score modifier, or your ability score is. So let's just say I was playing a wizard character, a mage character, who had to try to make that might check, and I had a -1 for my strength, then it would be, the 3d6 -1, and +2 if I had the focus, which would be very unusual, but not entirely unlikely that I might have a focus in the might ability as a wizard. So just because at every odd-numbered level you have to take a focus in ability that is not your primary, so it is something that can happen. But anyway, we're getting sidetracked, so I want to make this really quick and easy for the basic test. So I'm trying to force the door open. The game master says that the target number for me to be able to force the door is going to be 13. So I get +5 in total for my +3 for my strength, and +2 because I have the might focus. So I roll my check, and I get 5, 9, so I get 12 on the dice. So the value on the dice is not enough. However, because of my bonuses, I succeed, and I'm able to kind of carry on and continue. So that's a basic test, and again, those could be things like perception, things like spotting or hearing or seeing, or if you watched that tabletop where they had the the Dragon Age game, smelling, you know, things like might to force things open. There's all kinds of tests, basic tests that you can make that are very simple and straightforward. But there are situations where a single dice roll is not really going to be effective in, or satisfying, or challenging when it comes to a certain situation. So, for example, your characters may have to do some sort of research. Or your character, you maybe have a wizard character who wants to learn a new spell, or wants to learn a history of the Circle of Magi, or something along those lines, or even just an historical event that may be important to events that are going on now. You could have the character roll a single intelligence-based check to see if they're able to recall or learn the information. But you leave a lot to chance at that point, because basically if the character rolls poorly, then that may be it. You could also have a situation where you're doing some sort of negotiation or diplomatic scenario where being able to make a single persuasion check just seems anticlimactic. So instead of leaving it the chance that the characters may roll high or low, you can do what's called an advanced test. So an advanced test is a situation where you have multiple rolls that you're able to make. Now, depending on if there's time constraints or what's going on, the Game Master may limit the amount of checks that you can make to see if you succeed or fail. So, for example, if you are in negotiations with someone or doing something diplomatic, you may only have a certain period of time to be actually speaking with the individual, and that could limit the amount of checks that you're making. You could also be trying to track down a thief through the city streets. So it's possible that, again, the thief only has to go so far before they reach their hideout, or so many rounds. So the Game Master may limit the amount of rolls that you get. Most of the examples that I found in the book usually had 6 rolls as sort of the default amount. Now again, that can vary, and you could even just have it so that there's never a maximum. It's just a matter of each roll takes a certain amount of time. So for the research, for example, each roll could be considered a day of time that you spend in the library trying to find the information. The way that advanced tests work, and I'm just going to zoom in a little bit here if I can. So the way that advanced tests work is you get multiple rolls using usually the same skill ability focus or ability type, and you have to meet a target number, similar to a basic test. So in this case, let's just say that I'm trying to do some research on an historical event. So my pertinent ability is going to be +3. I'm just going to leave it at that. I'm not going to bother looking up the specific one at this point. But that's what I get total for a bonus when I make my checks. It's considered to be an average, difficulty to find the information. So the Game Master gives me the target number of 11, which is suggested in the book. And there is what's also called a success threshold. So what you have to do first is you make your check as per normal. So here's our 3d6. I get +3. I only need to get 10 or higher total. So right here we actually get 10 on the dice alone without actually having to worry about the bonuses or anything. So that's considered a success. So for my first check, my first day of research, my result was 9, 11. So 14 with my +3 bonus. Now for the for the success threshold, that's based off of what number is showing on your dragon die. So one of the things about the Dragon Age role-playing game is whenever you make your checks, it's important to leave the dragon die on the table without scooping it up. And it's a mistake I made a few times while I was doing the combat test, because it's just second nature. As soon as you roll your damage, you total everything up and you scoop the dice, right? So with this system, you really want to leave that dragon die there. So I don't need this 2 or this 5. They're not going to really do anything. I already know that I succeeded. But in order to reach that success threshold of 10, I have to get that amount or that number based on the combined total of rolls that I get on the dragon die for each success. So let's just say we got a dragon die value, so we have 4. So we got 4 out of 10. So let's just say we make our next check, and I'm going to fudge the numbers here a little bit, just so that it's going to fail. So we've got 2, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So we failed our check by 1. We weren't able, we had a day where the books that we picked up and read just didn't do anything for us. So that's a total value of 9. So that is not a success. So it doesn't matter what I roll in the dragon die here, I failed my check, so I don't get to count towards the success threshold. So next day I come back with sort of a renewed focus, and we have definitely more than 10. So we've got 11, 12, we have 15 total. Our dragon die is only 1, however. So we add the 1, which gives us a total of 5 now. And I've only got 6 checks here because I'm just going to say that we only have 6 days where we can have access to that library before we have to leave. And oh boy. So we've got 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, so we failed again. Now I rolled doubles, but because I failed the check, you don't generate stun points for something that you fail at. So another one wasted. So now I've only got 2 days left in the city before we have to leave for whatever reason. So the next day I come back and we succeed again. So I've got 6, 10, 12, 15, and I got another 4 on the dragon dice. So now I add that to the 5, and that is a 9 out of 10 so far. So I'm only one. Basically, if I succeed on the last check that I get, then I complete the advanced test. I successfully accomplish the advanced test. So the next day comes, and there we go. So I do that. Now again, the time frame doesn't, can be different for each one. Each roll doesn't necessarily have to be a day. It could be a round, it could be, an hour. It's up to the DM, or the game master, I guess I should say, not the dungeon master. It's up to the game master and the scenario that you're actually in. But for this one, again, we're just doing a little bit of research. So we've got 16, and that gives us a 13 total because we had the +4 to our 9. So we have succeeded on our test. So we learned whatever information that we were looking for, which is really cool. So that is the basics of the advanced test. And it's just a really, really cool system. I like this a lot. I think it's a way that, it takes the randomness of a single dice roll out of the equation. So there are a lot of situations where you have, like, you're trying to make a persuasion check in a Dungeons and Dragons game, and you either roll really well and you succeed and that's it, or you end up failing miserably and you insult the person and you just lost that opportunity. So I like this system quite a bit. It actually is similar to the concept of skill challenges in 4th edition. And I know when people hear 4th edition Dungeons & Dragons, there's a certain connotation that goes with that, but I actually really like the skill challenges that system had for the same reason. The issue with skill challenges in 4th edition D&D is that it was still significantly easier to fail them than it was to succeed, because you normally had to get a target number of successes on your skill checks before you got 3 failures. So a lot of times, it was even for a basic one, you may have to get 8 successes, and but you can only get 3 failures. So it was a system that it was better than relying on a single dice roll. But because you have the multiple dice and you have the system that you have here, this is actually a really, really great way of doing things, and I like this quite a bit. And another reason that I really like this is it's going to lead into the next subject that I want to talk about, and that is going to be the mass battle system for the Dragon Age role-playing game. So I'm just going to move this stuff off to the side because I don't really need it now. And I'm going to be going over the example that they give in the book. But the way that the mass battle system works is it's a system that's done in 3 phases, or 3 steps. And it relies on the advanced test formula. So essentially, each stage of the battle, you're doing advanced tests. So the 3 stages of the mass battle are the stage 1 is the opening moves. So this is kind of how your armies position themselves. And there's certain things that can add bonuses or take away, subtract or add penalties as well. The second stage is the main engagement, which is basically the slugfest. This is where all your tactics are basically out the window, and this is the main body of the actual fighting. And then you have the finishing moves. And the finishing moves are where you can once again sort of have those tactics come into play. During the opening move, so stage 1, the battle test is opposed cunning military lore tests. So again, this is sort of like strategy. So you've got the two armies that are coming up with their tactics, and it's an advanced, or it's an opposed test, meaning that both sides roll, and whoever gets the higher total wins. And they kind of go from there. So again, let's just have a look here. So we got our success thresholds. Oh, just bring this up a little bit. We've got our success thresholds for our tests, and the success threshold that we have varies based on the size of your army, and you only have a certain amount of checks. I think you get 6 rolls again for each stage. Or no, sorry, you don't have 6 rolls. You go until one side wins. So if you have 2 different armies, and the way that you also work out your armies is you kind of fill out the little bit of a stat card they have for them. So you have like the army's name, who their commander is, and you need to know what their commander's stats are. The 2 important stats that you need to know is their communication leadership ability and their cunning military lore ability, because those are the 2 ones that you're going to be using for the fight. You also have to know what size armies that you have as well as your primary troop types, so they'll be sort of the main bulk of your army, followed by your specialists and things along those lines. So let's just look at what we have here. So we've got our modifiers and our test difficulty. So you kind of look at what kind of army that you have or that you're up against, and you got your test difficulties and your success thresholds. You also have your modifiers, so your specialist troops. So for example, in the setup phase, the first phase of the mass battle, let's just say your character has scouts, so you get to add +1 for that. If you have surprise, depending, you might get a +1 to +3 bonus. If you're outnumbered 2 to 1, you get -1. If you're outnumbered 3 to 1, you get -2. If you're outnumbered 4 to 1, you get -3. If your opponent occupies high ground, you get -1. If you have enemy in prepared position, so if their army's already set and in a fortified position, for example, or they've got everything worked out, they got the barricades up, you get -2. Enemy in heavy fortification, so yeah, if they're in the fort, they get -3, and weather can also make an effect as well. Now, in order to prevent the mass battle just being a series of these types of rolls, and nothing else, you can also put in what are known as crisis points. Crisis points are complications on the battlefield. So things that can happen to kind of mess things up, or it's also a great situation to allow the player characters to do something. So you could set up a little mini kind of adventure that they have to go through, or a mini scenario that they have to go through to keep the battle going properly. The way that you win a mass battle is to win 2 out of the 3 stages of the fight itself. So if you win the first 2 stages, you've effectively won the battle pretty handedly. You still make the rolls for the 3rd stage, but again, if you win the first 2, then you've pretty much won the battle. You would still go through with any crisis points, however, just so that, again, something kind of eventful happens for the player characters. So what we have here is, just to sort of make everything make sense, I'm going to read the example that they give here. And the example that they give is the Battle of Ostagar from Dragon Age Origins. So if you played that game, you're familiar with what happens there. So I'm just going to read this all out. It's going to be a little bit dry because it is just reading the text, but we're going to go through and we're going to start with stage 1, which is the opening moves. So in stage 1 of the battle, the Darkspawn Horde approaches the Royal Army in Ostagar. King Kalen has scouts out in the Kokari Wilds, so this gives him a slight edge. Stage 1 is an advanced test using cunning military lore. King Kalen has a total of +4, +5 for his ability, +1 for his scout specialists, but he receives a -2 penalty because his forces are outnumbered 3 to 1. So his army is 5,000 and the Darkspawn have 15,000. The Herlock General has no specialists, so his total is just his ability of +3. The battle has 20,000 combatants, which makes it a huge battle and sets the success threshold at 20 for each stage. To determine the outcome of the stage, the Game Master now has the two leaders make an advanced cunning military lore test. The test difficulty is 11 for both sides, as their primary troop types are men-at-arms and Herlocks. So we've got, again, average, men-at-arms, Genlock, skeletons. Alright. The Game Master rolls for the Herlock General and lets the players roll for King Kalen. In the first 5 rolls, the Herlock General fails 2 of the tests and succeeds on 3, with the Dragon Dice results of 2, 3, and 5. This gives him a total of 10 towards the advanced test, only halfway to the 20 needed to win. King Kalen does much better, succeeding on all 5 tests and getting the Dragon Dice results of 2, 3, 3, 4, and 6. That gives him a total of 18. So I guess I should correct what I had said there. So you make the test, it's advanced, or it's opposed, but the opposition is who reaches the success threshold first. So I just want to clarify that. The Game Master could decide to play at a crisis point, however, he has none planned. So he has the 2 commanders roll again. Both succeed, but King Kalen's Dragon Dice result of 4 pushes him to the total of 22. As the first to get to the success threshold, King Kalen wins stage 1 of the battle. The Game Master decides that the Ferelden's located the Darkspawn Horde and engaged it with skirmishers. They didn't inflict a lot of damage, but they got the Herlock's General's attention and lured the Horde to the battle site that King Kalen has chosen in the ruins of Ostagar. As the armies maneuver for stage 2, it begins to rain. Alright, so stage 2. Now the main forces of the armies clash, and the battle test is based on communication and leadership. King Kalen's total is +6 for his ability, +1 for Mabari, +2 for knights, +1 for knights, +1 for mages, but -2 because they are outnumbered 3 to 1, and -1 for the poor weather. The Herlock General's total is +4 for his ability, +1 for ogres, +1 for Herlock emissaries, -1 for poor weather, and -1 for fighting an enemy on higher ground. As with stage 1, the test difficulty is 11 and the success threshold is 20. Once again, the players roll for King Kalen and the Game Master for the Herlock General. The first 6 rolls for the Herlock General, in the first 6 rolls, a Herlock General fails 2 of the battle tests and succeeds on 4, with Dragon Die results of 3, 4, 4, and 5, which gives him a total of 16 towards the advanced test. King Kalen succeeds on 5 of the 6 battle tests and gets Dragon Dice results of 2, 3, 3, 4, and 5, which gives him a total of 17. Both commanders now have a total within 5 of the success threshold of the battle, so there's a potential for a crisis point. The Game Master decides how the forces of Ferelden, the Game Master describes how the forces of Ferelden fire flaming arrows at the advancing horde, unleashing the Mabari hounds, and then charge the Darkspawn. The plan is that a small group of Grey Wardens stationed at the Tower of Ishal will light the signal beacon at the key moment, and Ferelden reserves under Tarn Logain will make a surprise attack on the Darkspawn and hopefully rout them. But there's a problem. Darkspawn have captured the Tower of Ishal. A group of heroes must enter it, defeat the Darkspawn, and light the beacon. Enter the player character. So this is the crisis point. The fight in the Tower of Ishal is a crisis point of the stage 2 of the battle, as portrayed in Dragon Age Origins. It is on the long side for a crisis point, but a battle of this magnitude, it is appropriate enough. And for tabletop play, a Game Master could easily shorten it if desired. In this example, the PCs fight their way through the tower, defeat a mighty ogre, and light the beacon. However, a fresh wave of Darkspawn overwhelms them in their moment of triumph, and there is a problem with the beacon. See Stage 3. The Darkspawn thus win the crisis point. The Herlock General adds 5 to his 16, and his total of 21 wins Stage 2. The battle success threshold, as you may recall, was 20. So when you're dealing with a crisis point, the crisis point can add, let's see here, I guess it looks like the crisis point can either take the place of, Okay, crisis point is triggered when an army is within 5 of the success threshold. At this point, okay, yeah, so they get to add 5. Whoever wins the crisis point gets to add 5 to their total combined results so far. So if they're both within 5, this basically the crisis point can help decide that stage of the battle. Alright. So now that the battle's on a knife's edge, with each side having one stage, with his victory in Stage 2, the Hurlock General can decide what the advanced test is going to be for Stage 3. He chooses Cunning Military Lore, since King Kalen is slightly weaker than that. So to the victor of the second stage, which is the main part of the battle, it kind of determines what test you're going to use. So you choose between the Military Lore or Leadership. With obviously the side that wins is going to pick the one that they have the advantage on. So it again it makes sense, and it's a way to reward the individuals who win the bulk of the fighting, which is again that second stage where most of the mass battle is going to take place. So now we get to Stage 3, finishing moves. The agreed upon Ferelden battle plan was that Loghain would lead a surprise attack on the Darkspawn once the beacon is lit. However, the treacherous Terran instead retreats, leaving the king and his army to its fate. Had the attack gone in, the Game Master would have given King Kalen a +2 bonus for a battlefield surprise. The betrayal of Loghain was such a shock that the Game Master gives this bonus to the Hurlock General instead. The Fereldans are bewildered that their reserves are marching off the field, and this gives the Darkspawn the advantage. In the final advanced test of the battle, neither side has specialist. King Kalen has a total of +2, +5 for his ability, -2 because his forces are at number 3 to 1, and -1 for poor weather. The Hurlock General now has a +4, +3 for his ability, and +2 for battlefield surprise, with the -1 for bad weather. Again, the test difficulty is 11, and the success threshold is 20. Now the Hurlock General has the advantage. He succeeds on the first 5 battle tests, getting Dragon Dice results of 2, 3, 4, 4, and 6 for a total of 19. Kalen now has the numbers against him and succeeds at only 3 battle tests. The Dragon Die results are 3, 4, and 5 for a total of 12. Another crisis point could be played out now at the last stand of King Kalen and the Grey Warden leader Duncan, for example, but the Game Master decides to roll one more time. The Hurlock General succeeds with a Dragon Die result of 2, while King Kalen fails again. That gives the Hurlock General a total of 21 and the victory. The Game Master describes how the Darkspawn Horde destroys the Royal Army in Ferelden, with King Kalen and Duncan slain in the final melee. The traitor Loghain has left the field with his troops, who will make him pay for his treachery, and what has happened to the PCs in the Tower of Ishal. So, that's just the example of how the mass combat system works. And again, this is a system that I really like. It's one of the more simplistic rules sets that I've seen for mass battles, and I think it does a pretty decent job. Now, there's more advanced stuff that you can kind of get into, such as losses and things along those lines. But I really just wanted to communicate the basic information for how the tests work. Now, since this uses the Dragon Age Origins Battle of Ostagar, which, by the way, spoilers if you haven't played the Dragon Age Origins, but this is something that does happen pretty early on, so it's not that big of a spoiler. But anyway, because it uses that as its basis, Kalen's army was essentially wiped out. There were a handful of people who were able to flee, but not really that many. It was kind of a smaller number that managed to get away, so you could work it out from there. If you want me to go into any more information about the mass battle system, please let me know. I just started reading it yesterday, actually, so I haven't gotten through the entire chapter as of yet. But just sort of to reiterate, the way that it works is you determine what type of army that you have, you look at your troop types, you look at any specialists that you may have, and how their specialties may work towards each stage of the battle. For example, having scouts is not going to be useful once the fighting actually starts. But if you have heavily armed units, like say you have an ogre for the Darkspawn side, that's going to give you quite an advantage because they are a very powerful enemy to go up against. Each stage is done using different advanced tests. So again, it's communication leadership, or or military lore. So those are the two types that you have. The first stage is done using military lore. The second stage is done using leadership. So you're going to be using both of those skills as time goes on. And whoever wins the second stage of the battle gets to determine which of those two will be used for the third. So the first two have their abilities tests set. And the third one, it's up to the victor of the main battle to determine which abilities you're going to use to go forward. When you get within 5 of your success threshold, the Game Master can introduce a crisis point, and whichever side wins the crisis point gets to add 5 to their current total, meaning basically the crisis point will typically decide that stage of the battle. Each army has to take certain things into consideration, such as their opponent's army size, weather, terrain, things of that nature. And again, it's just a really, really nice and simple system. I've removed my bookmark like a genius, but let's just see if I can find it again really quickly here. We're into the adventures there. Just give me a minute here. Just want to see if I can find. There we go. So we'll just take a quick look actually at the cards for the mass battle. So this is all the information that you really need for the mass battle system. So this is the size of the card. There's not a lot of information to keep track of, which I actually find really nice and refreshing. And with those crisis points, you still have something that the player characters can do to make their presence, very, very important. So you've got the Royal Army of Ferelden, you've got the Darkspawn Horde. King Cailan is the leader of the Royal Army. Hurlock General is the commander of the Darkspawn Horde. Their primary test type is Ferelden Men-at-Arms, difficulty 11. Now, there is a little bit of discrepancy here because Hurlocks were actually considered to be the tougher ones, so the Hurlock should actually be challenging. But Genlocks are considered average, so I think there was a little bit of a mix-up there. But anyway, they decided that they were both at test difficulty 11. You've got communication leadership of King Cailan at +6. You've got communication leadership of the Hurlock General at +4. King Cailan's military or cunning military lore is +3, and the Darkspawn has +3. So the Hurlock General has +3 military lore. You've got 5,000 troops for King Cailan's army, 15,000 troops for the Darkspawn army. You've got your stage 1 specialists, which are going to be your scouts, which again makes sense. They didn't have any there. Stage 2, you've got the Mabari, you've got knights, you've got mages, whereas these ogres have, or the Darkspawn have ogres and Hurlock emissaries, and again you just sort of go from there. And that's all the information that you need. So they do have working out casualties right here. So I haven't actually read this far yet, but let's just have a quick look at it here. So it says the basic battle system does not work out specific numbers of casualties. It is left to the Game Master to describe the outcome of the battle based on the advanced test crisis points at each stage. In many battles, the exact numbers of wounded and dead is not important to the larger story. There may be times when that information is valuable, however. Maybe you are running a campaign in which the PCs lead a guerrilla force in a desperate campaign. Since each soldier is a precious commodity, knowing how many fall in each battle is important information. To determine casualties, have each general make a cunning military lore test with the same target number as the battle. This roll determines how smartly the general used their troops. On a successful test, the army's casualties are equal to 35% minus 5% for each degree of success. On a successful test, casualties are equal to 30%. Or sorry, on an unsuccessful test, the casualties are equal to 30% plus 5% for each point in which the test was failed. These tests are modified by the test modifiers for casualties table. Alright, so let's just read our final example here. So you've got returning to the Battle of Oscar, the Game Master determines or decides he'd like to know the number of casualties caused. King Cailan and the Hurlock General each make a military lore with a target number of 11, the same as that of the battle. King Cailan has still +2, +5 for his ability, +1 for winning stage 1, -2 for losing stages 2 and 3, and -2 because his forces were outnumbered 3 to 1. The Hurlock General has a total of +4, +3 for his ability, +2 for winning stages 2 and 3, and -1 for losing stage 1. The Hurlock General rolls and gets a 14 on the test, but his Dragon Die result is only 1. That means his casualties are 35% -5% for his 1 degree of success, or 30%. So I guess it's based on the Dragon Die number. The Dark Spawns started with 20,000 troops. The Dark Spawns started the battle with 20,000 troops, so they suffered 6,000 casualties. The soldiers of Ferelden lost, but they took a lot of Darkspawn with them. Now, King Cailan rolls. Okay, technically he's dead, but the Game Master still uses his stats as he was a general throughout the battle. He rolls poorly. Being dead can take a lot out of you. Getting a total of 7. That means the casualties of the Royal Army of Ferelden are horrific, at 50%. 30% plus 20% by failing the test by 4. So 2,500 dead and wounded soldiers are left on the field. The fate of the wounded is best not contemplated. So, there you go. So that is the advanced test system for the Dragon Age role-playing game, and I assume it's probably the exact same in Fantasy Age or any of the other Age game systems rule sets that Green Ronin puts out, and the mass battle system as well. So again, I really like that system for the mass battles, and actually the third adventure in this book, the one that would have been with set 3 of the box sets, is essentially all about a mass battle. So it's mustering an army and going basically into this huge fight. So really like this system. If there's any other aspects of the Dragon Age role-playing game that you could suggest or that you may want to know more about, please let me know. Upcoming ones that I do want to talk about are level advancement, including how experience or levels are awarded. And that's the only one that I really have before I go into the actual full review of the game. So anyway, let me know in the comments below what you guys think. If you've had the rule books, if you played some of the adventures, have you ever got to try out the mass battle system? Have you ever had to do any advanced tests? And what are your thoughts on the system? Anyway, thank you guys once again for watching. I really appreciate your support, and we will see you next time. Take care.